What's up, friends? Just wanted to let you know, if you're new to Ableton Live or you want to go a little bit deeper and say that you've only been using Live for a year or two, I created a video course called Intro to Ableton Music Production, and it has tons and tons of videos teaching you from knowing nothing about Ableton Live to being able to produce full tracks in session view and arrangement view, learning Ableton's instruments and audio effects, and I'm going to continue to add content to it forever and ever in the future. So the course is going to get bigger over time. I'm going to be including webinars. You're going to have access to a private Facebook group where you can ask me ongoing questions for eternity. You can jump in that Facebook group and ask me, and other people and experienced Ableton users will join in. Right now I'm running a big special, 25% off if you join within the next 8 weeks. Jump in now as soon as you can while there's still time. Save 25% using the discount code ILOVEAbleton. And then you can save some money and spend that on MIDI controllers or whatever else you want. Check out the links in the show notes, and then you can click there and see the courses and purchase Ableton Live if you haven't already. Just go to liveproducersonline.com/courses to access the course. If you don't have Ableton Live, I can also save you 40%. I've got other courses in there. Check it out. Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. This is a great way to support me while learning some cool stuff. Now today we're going to talk with one of my friends and a really talented female producer. Her name is Dani DiCiaccio, and I'm stoked to have her on the podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the podcast. I'm your host, Dan Giffen. We have another special guest. Her name is Dani DiCiaccio, and you go under the artist name Kiyosi. You write some really cool stuff. It's like an indie electronica kind of really experimental project you've got going on. We actually met, I don't know, it's been like 7 years ago at the underground music school in New York City called Dubspot. You were working there at the time, and I was just attending my Ableton class. So this is like a throwback of good memories for both of us. So
for real, yeah.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast. I like your music. I think it's really cool. We're going to kind of dive into like your workflow and production techniques and things that you're doing. But like usually whenever we have a new guest on this podcast, I always ask like, how'd you get started with music? Like tell us quickly about like your musical journey and how that led to you to where you're at today.
So I guess I'm from Rochester, New York originally, which is where the Eastman School of Music is. So I was kind of lucky growing up to have access to a great school to do like continuing ed type stuff. And so I started taking voice lessons pretty seriously in high school. And then throughout that, like once I started studying, I was pretty immersed in voice, in music theory. So my background is very, very much by the book and of the classical mindset. And it wasn't until out of college that I started getting more into electronic production and sort of like messing around with even things as simple as GarageBand, Fruity Loops, like whatever I could get my hands on, and just messing around with making sounds and sampling ever so slightly. I think that's kind of that's the genesis of it all. And then I just started to develop all those into songs and put out various pieces over the years and would show friends and family. And sometimes, depending on how good I felt about what I had written, would go through the exercise of like trying to brand it and trying to like get it seen versus just like throwing something up and waiting for my family to listen to it.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for all 5 listens, Mom.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's the background. And then I decided to move to New York like around 8 years ago because I was having like just like some really dope collaborations that were happening between here and Ithaca, where I was living at the time. Mm-hmm. And got here, started working at Dubspot, really just like did whatever I could to get in the scene and meet other people and like learn through osmosis. And it sort of worked, you know. I started taking Ableton classes when I wasn't working the front desk there. I got pretty good at it. I got to know some folks at Ableton. And I mean, that's a massively oversimplified version of the story, but that's basically it.
No, I think you were using Logic Pro when I first met you.
Oh my gosh, what a good memory.
Yeah. I know, I'm proud of myself. My memory is actually usually pretty bad. So, but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I remember because you were always there at the front desk every morning walking
Yeah.
in, and I was not like always a morning person, but I was like, she seems really nice. Kiva was my instructor.
Yeah.
And I remember you mentioning to me, you're like, so what class are you in? I was like, oh, the Ableton class. And you're like, oh man, I've been really wanting to get into Ableton. And that was like about 7 years ago. So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
I know. I think for me, coming from a classical background, Logic just was a really easy transition,
Hmm.
because it's left to right. It like looks like sheet music, and so Ableton, the first few times I looked at it, it didn't feel inviting and
Yeah,
warm. It felt like it was
yeah,
gray. It had all of these boxes in weird places. Like I
yeah,
didn't. There was no natural way to get into it. So it wasn't until someone showed me arrangement view and then showed me how to like make
yeah,
vocal chains,
yeah.
that I really decided like I have to jump into this.
Hmm. Yeah, the first time I opened Ableton Live was probably like a couple months before I went to Dubspot, and I didn't know how to get sound out of it. What do I do with this? This crazy looking animal. It was weird. And I was using Pro Tools and doing remixes and drum covers that
Mhm.
I didn't know how to mix anything. Like I was just making up as I went in Pro Tools, and I was like, there's got to be more to life than just Pro
Yeah.
Tools. So I started doing research and found Ableton, and that led me there. But
Yeah.
so did you end up taking an Ableton class at Dubspot?
I did with Kiva.
Okay, yeah.
And then I did like one of the benefits of working there was like I could just ask any teacher at any time
Hmm.
about stuff. Chris
Yeah,
Petty
yeah.
became like a really great buddy of mine, and I still hit him up when I have questions about stuff.
Cool.
So
That's awesome.
I learned from a lot of folks there.
Yeah, it was a fantastic school. Rest in peace, Dubspot. It's not there
R.I.P.
anymore.
I know it's
RIP.
like a muffin shop now.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a big muffin shop. It would,
Well, I mean, it's like and luxury apartments.
yeah. I'm sure not all the spaces are being used for muffins because it was a pretty decent size. I remember they
Yeah.
renovated after I left. It got pretty big.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, they were, I think, some of the early adopters that put Ableton live tutorials on the map on YouTube. I mean, they had so many tutorials. I think that really kind of blew up that academy. It was through there, and they had some incredible certified trainers. Kiva
Yep.
was one of them. Yeah, good memories. It's a good time.
Yeah, it really was. Yep. I loved it.
Me too. Well, you, speaking of music, have released a 3-song EP not terribly long ago called Negative Space.
Hmm.
And I kind of want to just pick your brain and talk about that production process. Like, first of all, how did this project or EP start? Like, when did that come about?
So I've been working with a collaborator for a couple of years now. His name is Todd Brosman.
Hmm.
He's a jazz pianist that I met here in the city. And we met and just sort of instantly clicked musically. He's one of those first people I've ever met that I can throw back my old school jazz head, like my early 2000s, late
Yeah,
90s jazz picks, and he can match me album for album, track for track.
it's cool.
So we just found that we had a lot of sensibilities and foundational inspirations that were similar. And we just started jamming and showing each other gear and sort of showing each other techniques for looping and production stuff. He does some really cool stuff with jazz piano and electronics.
It's
It's super
awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And so we just started passing tracks back and forth. I showed him, I think for each of these three tracks, it's pretty split between who started the bones of it, and then when we passed it off, what the other person did. So we passed the music back and forth. We got together a lot. I live in Queens. He lives in Harlem, so it's relatively easy for us to get together. But I
Yeah.
think anytime you're collaborating with somebody, just the process of talking through what you want it to be and
Hmm.
making sure you're on the same page, being in the same room, and really ad nauseum, making sure you're on the same page all the time. And that was the overarching theme. I think another thing that's interesting when you're collaborating with somebody is keeping space for their ideas.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, sometimes I produce and I'm like, that's it. that's the lick. Like that's the
Yeah.
thing. Gotta stay there.
Yeah.
And
And they might have thrown it away or something,
oh, there were
Right.
times like I
Yeah.
like deleted everything he did. Like I'd save it as a new file and like just like totally like delete everything and restore it to what I thought was perfect. And then I'd listen back to like what he did a few hours later and I'd be like, oh shit. Right. He was so right. But there's like
Yeah.
a preciousness I think you need to
Yeah,
let go of when you're working with somebody.
for sure.
And you have to like remember why you started working with them in the first place. I
Hmm.
wouldn't have done it if he was like a poor choice, you know.
Right,
Like I did
right.
it because he's great.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like it comes down, I think, to being able to trust that person's opinion and skill set. And then when you have that trust, it makes being in the moment and in the room so much easier and so much more magical.
Totally.
That is true. Well, I know that you at one point were working with Splice,
Yeah,
and
I do. I still do.
and you
Yeah.
still do, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've used Splice for collaborations, but I find I'd much rather be in the room with somebody
Of
because
course.
for
Yeah. It's nice.
those moments, like you said, yeah, where it's just like that aha moment where they might have just skipped right over, it and you're like, no, we need to keep that. That was too good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is speaking of Splice? Like, what is your role there? Like, what exactly are you doing with Splice right now?
So my title is I'm the director of content, merchandising, and marketing, which
Okay.
means all of the like sample packs that we put up, ranging from the artist packs to label packs to projects that we commission from certain labels, making sure that they go in the right spaces on the site, making
Hmm.
sure that they fulfill a need for the end user. Um, and that they are really up to snuff, that we're making sure that they're seen and able to be a problem solver for the person on the other end of the screen.
Yeah. So, for somebody who knows absolutely nothing about Splice, doesn't even know what it is, maybe you could just describe that for them real quick.
What Splice is?
Yeah, like what is Splice for somebody who doesn't know?
So Splice is it's a hub of a few important tools for music producers. One of
Hmm.
those tools would be things like samples, loops, one shots. So somebody who's really sort of a purist might say, I'm only going to take like little drum shots here and there and build my drum rack out of it. And somebody who needs inspiration or needs to start a song in a pinch might go with a loop, like a melodic loop or a harmonic loop that they drag out in Ableton to be the bedrock of something that they do. So for that reason, like in that sense, it feeds both the like super professional person and the hobbyist who's just trying to get ideas out.
Yeah.
There's also things like MIDI patterns. So if you need like a jazz lick, for example, or a keyboard lick, and you know what you want, but you can't play it, and you can't like make it happen in the MIDI view, you could download some MIDI,
See,
and
I
then you
didn't
can assign a
know that.
script.
I didn't know Splice
Yeah.
was actually selling MIDI packs too.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah. MIDI sounds, presets. Um, yeah, all sorts of tools. There's also like another section of it is gear. So if you like, you mentioned Ozone 9,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we have that now.
Mhm.
We have like a rent to own gear
Which is
platform. So
nice.
like
Yeah.
initially like that, like a lot of times that hit to buy software is a lot, you
Sure.
know, a lot of people don't get it because it's pretty pricey.
Yeah.
But if you can pay like $10 a month or
Hmm.
something like that, it's much more
Yeah.
feasible.
And some of those like don't have free demos. Like some software companies don't have free demos. So if you could do like a rent to own and you just pay like say like $9 for 1 month, you're like,
Yeah.
you can kind of test out that way too.
Yeah, you get to try it out. And then there's the studio, the stuff that you mentioned, right? Which is like uploading and sharing your project with people. More, I think increasingly the blog has become a real source of inspiration. You were mentioning that like that DubSpot had done that early on with videos and tutorials and stuff. I see Splice really filling that kind of gap at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like definitely one of the best 7.99s a month I pay
Oh,
for
that's good
sure.
to
Like,
hear.
yeah. No, I love it. I've been using, and I have a ridiculous amount of credits. I don't know if people actually end up using all the credits that they buy on Splice.
Ah,
There's so many.
cool.
Yeah. But then I'd say Spotify Premium and Splice are probably my two best subscriptions I pay a month.
Okay. Where's Netflix fall in that?
Well, I'm using the parents' Netflix account, so it's free. Right.
Nice.
If
That's
you could
awesome.
score that, that's always good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk some more about your music then. We
Okay.
were talking about the 3-song EP, Negative
Mhm.
Space, and you met this jazz pianist that you've been collaborating with, and you wrote a lot of it together. As far as the production process, when you started a song, did you already have stuff produced that you just kind of had him fill in on? Or did you guys start completely from scratch? And did you use Ableton Live? What did that look like?
Yes, we definitely we did everything in Ableton. We brought in some plugins here and there. I'm not even sure I remember which ones, and like a whole host of synths that he has.
Okay.
Um,
So he had like, he was using like his own sounds in his synth brain? Or were you using like MIDI patterns, like plugins?
No, like there were some plugins involved, but then also like I think we used a Prophet on some of it that he has. But anyway, everything was based in Ableton and passing that back and forth or getting in the room and doing it. And the process was like for one of the tracks, for example, I had like created the bones of that. You know, I created I created like a basic rhythm. I wrote the lyrics and put like some basic keys down, you know, just make sure he could sense what I was going for. Sure. And then he filled it in. He wasn't a hired gun, you know, it wasn't like he was a studio musician and I said, do this, this, and this. Right. It was, here's this thing, like do what you feel makes sense. And so for that reason, it was really like a 50-50 collab the whole time.
Awesome.
Like we really wrote and developed each of these together.
Yeah. And that's fun for a musician rather than just being a hired hand, is like taking that ownership over it, you know?
Totally. Sure. It's fun for me too, because I trust him, you know, I wanted to do that. And I'm not somebody who churns out a lot of music. And so I wanted to do this with somebody that I think is fun to work with and someone that I, you know, that I trust and that I could like have something super dope with in the long run.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, and whoever you're collaborating with, I mean, if they have more say in the project and they take more ownership over it, then they're going to share it with all their friends. And as far as like getting it out there, that's always a win-win, because you increase your circle of people that are going to hear it and listen to it.
Totally.
For sure. Cool. So I do a very similar thing with my productions. Like, and I know you can relate to this as like a solo artist. Like you have your own project, you know, when you're working on something for so long by yourself, you know, it's nice to be able to bring other people in like that, to be able to expand off your creativity. So I do a similar thing now. I have my own solo artist name is Philia, and then I have like a Philia live band. Does he play live with you too, or are you mostly just playing solo live with the stuff that he
has played live with me, but I think I haven't played live in a while because I've just been so busy with other stuff. So I think next time, like for this next run of shows in 2020, I'm hoping that we'll do it together. It's just more fun.
Yeah.
As like somebody who goes to shows, I like it when there's more people on stage and more folks involved.
Totally. Yeah, there's more energy, I feel like, when you get all those people up there.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to play with a drummer too. I think that's my next move. I've been talking to a couple drummers, and I think that's an energy I'd really like to add.
Yeah. Well, I might be biased, but drums are my favorite instrument, because that's like,
you're a drummer, right?
Yes, that's my main thing. But being a DJ and a drummer, you know, it's nice to have somebody else rather than just sitting on a drum set and playing by yourself. Although some solo drummers and producers have done that, almost like a drumming DJing type of thing, which is what I was doing for a while. But yeah, it's way more fun to play with other people. Yeah,
I agree.
What does your live setup look like when you've taken these tracks? Like, what are you using? Maybe we can nerd out a little bit. Like, what kind of hardware?
So I've gone through a few phases. Like, I think next time around, and the most recent shows I played were taking the stems. So once things had been mastered, taking the mastered mixed stems, and then rearranging the tune so that it's not exactly like the studio version when I play it live. So maybe I want a little more space during a breakdown, or I want that intro to be longer, or I don't want the bass to drop quite yet. I sort of like create space so that there's a structure. And usually there's time in the middle of it somewhere for improvisation. So there's like a scheduled improv section somewhere.
Yeah. That's tight.
And then once I do that, I sort of like re-export the little bits and pieces, throw them into session view. And depending on like where in the set they fall, I will do I'll set up like a bunch of follow actions so that I don't have to be right at the push. I use a push.
Okay.
Or sometimes I do play certain parts. So I've got the push set up with like all of the stems exported and ready to go.
Yeah.
I've got what the heck is it called? A Boss 505 looper.
Nice. Yeah.
You know what those things are? They're like the like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
5 button, very tactile, like
Mhm.
large looper things.
A lot
I
of
use that.
guitarists love those. I see a
People
lot of
love it.
guitarists. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I still love that thing. I've had it for like 3 years now, and it's one of the better gear purchases I've ever made.
That's interesting.
Um,
So you do live looping with the outboard gear rather than inside of Ableton's looper?
yeah,
Okay.
I do. I don't. I like it. I'm
Yeah.
really attached to that, like that
Sure.
workflow. I know how to
Totally.
like use that machine very well.
Yeah.
And I just haven't really invested the time into like the Ableton looper. So
Yeah. To be
I'm
honest with
good.
you, I've had, and maybe this is just me, but I've had some like weird bugginess with the looper, like, and
Okay.
sometimes it's glitched on me a few times, and it made me scared, and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. So like I
Um,
used to use it a lot, but I had it like kind of misfire or double trigger on me a few times and do some weird things with the timing and pitching. So,
yep.
but that was a while ago. That was like early Ableton 9. So maybe
Okay.
it's been updated since then.
There's glitches. I mean, I love Ableton, but there's
Yeah.
glitches with it. You know, there's
Yeah.
glitches with it. Like I think there's some glitches that I really embrace with
Mhm.
Ableton, like beat repeat, for example. Like
Yes. I love
I
that
think
thing.
is like
That's
it's
so
one of the
fun.
more
Happy
un
accidents.
yes, it's
Yeah.
just all like I never know what to expect, but like I mess with it. You know, it's fun
Yeah.
sometimes, but I would not rely on that
Right.
um,
Right.
for anything ever.
Sure. So you've got your boss pedal that you're looping, the 505,
Yep.
I think you said, and then
Yeah.
you've got your push. Is that a push one or push two?
Two.
Yeah, completely different controllers. They really
I
are.
know. I know. I've seen a one. I never like really got to know the one, but
Hmm.
I like the two. I'm really
Yeah,
happy with it.
yeah, me too.
Um, what else? So, and then the rest of it is kind of like I use a duet interface,
Okay.
um,
Yeah,
which the Duet 2.
the
Um,
Apogee, right?
yep,
Yeah.
Apogee Duet 2, which is also kind of glitchy. Like
Really?
earlier this year, I worked with Laura Escuday.
Yeah,
Um,
she's great. She was on the
uh,
podcast actually a while
oh
ago.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I took her
So
master track program in LA.
oh, good. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I did her other one, her
nice.
like the live set one,
Yeah, yeah,
transmute.
yeah.
She called it.
Transmute. Yes. No, Laura's awesome. She's great.
Yeah, she's a legend,
She is.
and she's trying to get me to had been trying to get me and a few other students to switch to what is it, Mother of the Dragon?
Apollo?
No, unless they make Mother of the Dragon. I'm
No,
not sure what
I've
it is.
never heard of that. That's wild.
Neither had I. I was like,
Dude,
Motu? What's that?
I'm gonna Google that. Mother of the
Yeah, I
Dragon.
would.
It's an interface, right?
Yeah, it's an interface. So I don't know. That might be an upgrade I make one of these days. But so far, the duet seems to be working. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, and then I'll bring a mini log and like play some of the bass lines as
Okay.
well. I've done
Nice.
that before, though that's not like a standard thing.
Yeah.
I've got a
And you
couple.
sing, right? You sing
Oh
live.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
sing.
yeah, of
Right, I
course.
sing.
Yeah.
So like I
You-
have like my mic. I control all the vocals and then just send front of house like the vocal
Mhm.
signal, but I control everything in Ableton, and I've got
Right.
like a vocal rack that I've just sort of been working on over the years.
Cool.
So yeah.
What does your vocal chain look like? I'm curious, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. So it starts with a gate so that I don't pick up like too much background noise.
Yeah, feedback isn't fun. No.
Yeah, so it starts with that, and then it's an EQ that's like all sorts of like custom dips and
Mhm.
you know things that I have just learned to like on my voice over the year. Those two things pretty much once I set them never change. Once
Okay.
I'm in a venue and I've like done a sound check,
Yeah.
um, maybe the gate a little bit if things get noisy, but for the most part that stays exactly where it is. And if it gets knocked out before I start, I'm like, that's a bit of I've had to do that before where the gate gets kind of messed up and I have to like you know listen carefully and make sure I readjust it.
Yeah.
And then the rest is kind of like the fun stuff that I often adjust a little bit here and there depending on the song. So um, There's a reverb that always sort of sits at like a baseline of like, I don't know, 20% maybe.
Yeah.
And then I sort of adjust it up and down. There's I forget what I called it, like an EQ that sort of takes off all of the low end that makes it sound like a little bit like I'm singing through a tube type thing.
Okay. Nice.
Like a radio voice that I use often. There's chorus. I love the sound of chorus. I
Yes.
also have a chorus guitar pedal that I sometimes use. I haven't used it in a
Cool.
while live, but it sounds
Yeah. Nice.
and it's made electro harmonics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. I know them. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I've used that in the past, which is a lot of fun. Just makes the voice sound really fat and like
Yeah.
detunes things a little bit.
Right.
Kind of cool.
Choruses are fun because they detune it, but they also make it sound like it's more in tune at the same time. It's kind of like this weird,
Yeah,
beautiful phenomenon. That is true.
yeah,
Yeah. Have you ever played with Sound Toys? Any of their plugins?
yeah. Not much.
They make my favorite chorus is by them, and it's called Microshift. And then they make a really simple, dumbed down version called Little Microshift, and it's like
Okay.
3 buttons. And that thing sounds better than any chorus I've ever used or heard in my life.
Really
It's so simple. It's so easy. I love that thing. Yeah.
cool.
Shout out to Sound Toys. Those dudes are great.
Uh,
Great people and a great company too.
trying to think of what else I use. I use a lot of overdrive on my voice. I like the idea of it being like feeling like blown out and distorted. I think also that kind of comes from having a classical background. Like I sometimes I think I'm out of it at this point, but in the past when I was singing, I felt like I sounded too trained or too refined, and
Yeah.
I wanted to like make it sound dirtier, grittier.
Hmm.
So
Totally.
those are some of the things like the tools I have available.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to what you just said, I find myself, especially with electronic music, having to work really hard to make things sound more natural and like, especially in the groove realm as a drummer, like things can sound so
Mhm.
over programmed, you know what I mean? And I think like sometimes as a producer, for me anyway, I have to work hard to make things sound more natural if I'm like programming something with MIDI and quantizing and
Right.
things like that.
Yeah, totally. That's one of the great things about working with a jazz pianist
Yeah.
is like I am pretty much on the grid, and he takes it right out of that and puts it back into like a real
Yeah.
life vibe,
Totally.
which I love.
Yeah, and that's like one of my favorite features that I've been using, I think, more now than ever is the groove pool. And you can like right click, say your jazz pianist or whoever is actually playing those MIDI notes, you can
Hmm.
just go into that clip and extract the groove out of that, make the drums follow it or anything else follow it. And the groove pool, I think, is something that I'm still wrapping my head around as far as like dialing it in. But that's like a fun hack I've been doing more of recently.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
groove pool for the win. Good time. Sweet. So you said you're not playing a whole lot of shows right now, but that's like a fun little nerd out session in your live performance.
Hmm.
And you said you're using Session View?
When I perform, yep.
Okay. But you do a lot of your editing for the live performance in Arrangement View, and you just drop it over to Session.
Yeah, I make it different
Mhm.
and like make it I want people to come and hear something new, even if it's just a few notes or
Sure.
like a different drop
Totally.
like that. So I make
Yeah.
that happen in arrangement view.
And no, and that's a great example of like a great show is I'll go see some of my favorite artists and I've heard their songs like 6 billion times. But when you
Right.
go see them play the same song that you love and there's like that element of surprise to it, that's like just like an aha, wonderful wow moment, I feel like, for the audience, especially for somebody who knows your music really well.
Yep.
Showing up and they hear it new, it's almost like they're hearing that a new song of the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
people love that for sure.
People, man, there, especially in New York, there on any given night, there are hundreds of things that people could be doing.
This is
Hundreds.
true. This
That's
is true.
never lost on me. Like anytime I
Yeah.
have a show and there's people there, I'm blown away that people like
Yeah.
would take like their free night in New York City and come
Totally.
and see me. Like it's the least I can do to like put something there that they like didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I feel like I owe it to them to like do that versus just do a playback session or
Hmm.
something.
Yeah. it was ridiculous how much money I spent when I lived there going to shows, because every
Yeah,
single night there's somebody that you want to see. So
totally.
it's good practice of budgeting your entertainment budget.
Oh,
I loved
should I
it.
eat or should I go to Baby's All
Yeah,
Right tonight?
yeah, yeah,
hmm
for sure. So what are some of your favorite venues that you've played?
Um, let's see. They're all different, Like I
Mhm.
think was Trans Picos around when you were here? It's this really cool spot
I don't
in
remember that.
so one
Possible
of the
though.
neighborhoods that's kind of like been coming up in the last 5 years or so is Ridgewood, which is like right on the corner, right on the border of Bushwick, but it is
Okay.
in Queens. It's
Yeah.
technically a little bit north, and it is in Queens, but it's still got that. It's off the L. It's still got that Bushwick,
Yeah.
Brooklyn vibe,
Okay.
and so um, they have two rooms. They've got an upstairs and a downstairs, and the downstairs is just this like dope, sweaty, very cool vibe. Um, and I love playing there. It gets packed, like probably maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 people, but like everybody who's there is very much present.
Yeah, and they're like real
Um,
into it. What's the name of that venue again?
it's called Trans Picos.
Trans Picos. I'm gonna check that out. Nice. So what kind of
Yeah.
genre is it usually that's playing there?
I believe it varies pretty heavily. Like
Yeah.
when I was there, it was like a beat night, where there was a lot of like people just triggering beats and making beats on the spot. I've seen like West African performances there before. So I
Nice.
think it's just like a cool spot for all sorts of music heads. There's another venue around there called Hollow, HOLO, that's got a kind of a cool like Berlin vibe going. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
and then there's like the pretty standard Lower East Side venues like Rockwood, Mercury Lounge.
I love
Um,
Mercury Lounge. I've seen some
yeah,
great shows there. It's a fun place.
yeah. I actually never have played there, but I just say it like in conjunction. I've played Rockwood a bunch.
Yeah. They
But
send a
just like
lot of emails. I get a lot
I
of
know
emails
they
from them.
do, they do. Yeah, those are some that I've like have really enjoyed
Yeah.
playing at.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like we could probably talk for hours about different venues in New York City. There's just so many.
hmm
It's such a big city. So what's in the works? What's next for you as an artist?
I really want to like spin up this live set, for
Okay.
2020 and start
Sure.
playing some shows.
Yeah.
Especially with the new stuff that we've done. Like I'm eager to get that into a live format and share that with more people. I've been doing some scoring projects, which is a lot of fun. Um,
Nice.
not something I've done a ton of in the past, but it's a really cool way to just exercise using
Creative
sound in a
juices.
new way. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really fun. I love doing that, so I'm eager to keep finish some of those projects and keep doing more.
Yeah.
Um,
Started recently doing some of that too. And what I do is I usually just take the video and I'll just drop it in Ableton Live and score
yeah,
around it.
me
Just to
too.
get the vibe. Yeah. No, it's super fun. You're right, because it's like this blank canvas but you have something to start with already that's not sound. And I don't know, it's fun to be able to create that vibe and that mood.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Like I think a perfect example, and this is like kind of comical, is there's a viral YouTube video of Mary Poppins, and it was the original trailer, and somebody scored like this terrifying, like really scary music. They scored it like underneath the original trailer, and it made this like fun kids movie look absolutely terrifying,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
a horror film. It is like literally music has that power to like change the way you feel about what you're looking at. So like
100%.
scoring for film is a good time. It's fun.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Look that up. It's called Scary Mary.
Okay, you got
it's,
it.
it's like Mary Poppins is like a horror trailer. It's so funny. It's all the music. Yeah. So like basically you're working on your live performance, and that's pretty much the next thing coming for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share on the podcast? I know that I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you've got other things going on today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think no, I mean that's about it. I just like it's been such an awesome reception to like put this music out and have people like you like interested in talking about it.
Yeah.
Like people like DMing me and stuff. It's just so kind. I'm so humbled. It's very
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not somebody who like I said puts out a ton of music, so I don't necessarily like expect like the hugest reception. but this time it's been like a really sweet and kind response to the music. So I'm so happy with that.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you're super talented. I think you have your own sound. It's like kind of a blend of that, like indie electronica with like an experimental side kind of brought into it, which is unique, you know. But I think maybe it works in your advantage too, not to be releasing music 24/7, because it almost creates like a commodity out of it, you know. Like in the world we live in today, you know, it's so easy at your fingertips to listen to new music constantly, and artists are always putting it out. So maybe like for somebody like you who isn't putting out like tons and tons of music all the time, it's almost like this unique release, you know, so it's something to look forward to. So maybe that works out in your advantage.
Maybe. I mean, one thing I've learned is that there are no rules, you know, so like whenever somebody says that something is a rule, like it's a rule for them and it's worked for them. And that's all that means.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I would agree with that for sure. And I find myself like almost having to create a couple rules for myself because my music's all over the place. Where it's just like, I'm going to make some jazz, and the next day I'm making like deep house. And then like the next day it's like being selective of like, okay, what really is me as far as like the sound you're going for as an artist can be challenging sometimes. But I think, but I think when like you can put your name on something and feel proud of it, doesn't matter what it sounds like, put it out there.
I agree.
That's cool. Well, Dani, it's always fun hanging out with you. Like, it's been a while since the good old Dubspot days. I ran into you at Ableton's Loop conference. I don't know what, like a while ago. Yeah, in LA, like 6-7 months ago or whatever. And I was like, oh, wait, I know you. And so here we are. I finally got you on the podcast. Good time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's good to talk to you too. You've done such big things since I last talked to you. So
well, thank you. And you as well, for sure. Tell everybody at Splice I said hello. And thanks again for joining the podcast. Keep making awesome music, and maybe we'll have you back another time.
My pleasure. Take care.
Hey guys, just want to remind you that all my courses right now for the next several weeks are 25% off. If you want to take your Ableton Live skills to the next level, whether it's you're new to Ableton Live or you want to go deeper in production, or you want to learn how to DJ, or maybe you want to take your band or solo project to the stage, I have several different courses. Use the discount code ILOVEAbleton and go to liveproducersonline.com/courses. That's liveproducersonline.com/courses. If you don't already own Ableton, enrolling in a course will get you 40% off, or you could purchase it solo by going to liveproducersonline.com/buyAbleton. Thanks for checking out the podcast. See you guys next time.